My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is the founder and executive director of Advocates of the South. Advocates of the South was founded by intersex male of trans experience through lived experiences with dealing with the many disparities in the South. Lack of resources and oppression in Black communities, Advocates of the South was born. I hope that you enjoy this episode.
Them boys, them boys, amplifying trans men and color voices, yeah, we here making noise, making noise, visibility equals possibility, you know we them boys,
Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is the founder and executive director of Advocates of the South. And a message from my guest: when we say all, Black lives matter. When we say no one left behind, it begins to bring a true love and an atmosphere that we can all thrive in. Welcome to the show.
Hey. Thank you, Sean. I'm especially grateful to be here with you. Y'all are doing so much in community and for community. I definitely appreciate it. Again, I am, Demarco Lord, founder, executive director of Advocates of the South Incorporated. We are leading and are hopefully leading the movement in a great direction in the South, especially in Atlanta, known as a Bible Belt state. We are doing it not only with just trans lives, gender non-conforming, gender fluid, and also, intersex. I hope that we bring that resignation for everyone, on this platform, because we are Black brothers and we should be doing what? Moving the movement and standing together. And I appreciate it, brother, for you all having us here and on your show and your podcast, because it speaks a lot for us and for the South. We haven't been able to air a lot of work that's going on in the South, not only with us, but for other brothers, for other sisters, that's going on here in the South. So we definitely appreciate it. So, I'm here for y'all. Let's go.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And so you say the South. So for folks that are listening who may not know what that reference of the South means, maybe we have some other folks maybe listening from other parts of the world and not really familiar with when we say the South. You want to go ahead and give folks a quick little geography lesson of when you say the South, where about is that?
So the South for me is and for us, for the org, especially is Atlanta. The Bible Belt state of them all. I call Atlanta the capital. The little hit cities, they don't get hit until the main city get hit, if you know what I'm saying. So Atlanta is that capital of the South to me. And so when we endure, if we don't stand up, it's affected through all out of the rest of the South. That's what I describe as, the real South. What we going through here, if we don't face it here, it's later on hit throughout the South.
Thank you for that. So just wanted to make sure that folks know, I know what it is, right? But then I've only been to Atlanta once. And so even I'm not as familiar with the South as, I live in the Bay Area. And so it's it's different. The atmosphere is different.
Where I'm from.
Vibe is different. You from the Bay?
Yes.
Oh, that's what's up. I did not know that. Whereabouts in the Bay?
San Francisco, Mission Street.
Yo, I did not know that. So you my neighbor. Okay,
yes,
so what took you to Atlanta then?
So I kind of kept coming back and forth to Atlanta. I kind of want to tell this story, but I don't. I'm gonna let it air if it do. I was kind of close with the real founder of Black Lives Matter. And so that kind of led me out into Atlanta within itself. I was a chapter leader early on. But I did it out in San Francisco. San Francisco doesn't bring that oppression feeling like in the South. So he said, how do you feel about coming to Atlanta? It's going to be real different. So when I came out to Atlanta, I definitely felt real different, and I felt like the work was on the ground here. Back home, I'm gonna be honest with you, in San Francisco, freedom lives.
What do you mean by that? I know what you mean by that because I'm from around here, so I know. But what you mean by that for folks who listening and don't understand that or may never visit this part of the
So
country?
yes, so in San Francisco, the one thing about it is uh, I want to be technical but untechnical about it. So in San Francisco, a black person respect another black person. A white person don't care nothing about what you doing. Because one thing about it is we all striving for the same thing. Rates in San Francisco are so high that everybody respect everybody just because you live there. I never faced racism when I lived in San Francisco. I didn't see that until I moved into the South. I didn't see the oppression upon black people until I moved into the South. I never faced that back home. That's on everything. So I struggle with a lot out here in the South. Cause back home, guess what? Brothers, if we came together, we came together. It wasn't no your org is bigger than mine, or you doing this, or you copying me, or none of that. It was all love. So when I hit home, it felt like a freedom and a true liberation. That's why I'm able to speak about liberation, because I actually know what it feel like.
I will say though, we not all perfect. So I don't for folks listening, I don't want you to be like, damn, this is a perfect world over here. It ain't perfect, right? You do have your little pockets of things,
Yeah,
but for the most part, you kind of right. People, it's a melting pot of everybody. Everybody is
it
here.
is.
Everybody
It
is here.
is. And let me tell you something. The one thing about it is when people come into San Francisco, you learn that the one thing about it is San Francisco, I ain't gonna lie to you. The living cost is so heavy, you ain't thinking about whether your neighbor Mexican, white, black. They can be the most historic even. And if you paying what I'm paying, we all good. I just want to be real. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of times in today we lose that message. That for number one, we're human. We all here. We all here in this together. And I think that as the community in certain areas continues to divide, especially in the South, I think that's tearing brotherhood apart. And I think if I could speak on anything else, we at this time with so many passing away, we got to speak on what do we see next for us?
What do we see next for us? That's a really good question, and I definitely want to talk more about that and get into that because that's thought provoking, and it's a good question. And I want to ask you the name Demarco. I like that name, by the way. I just feel like it holds holds a kind of value to it. I don't know. It's just something about it. How did that name Demarco? How did that choose you?
So I'm not gonna say it chose me. My dad was kind of on his deathbed at the time with the VA hospital. And I asked him, so, I told him, he said, well, your name is universal. So why would you want to choose another name? Because your name fits not only, it fits both categories. So why would you want to choose another name? And I told him, I just want to be able to look at myself differently. Um, and so my dad chose the name. And what really stuck is because I've had a best friend that's been my best friend since elementary school, and she's actually out here in the South in Atlanta. She didn't have great connection with my dad, and she said the same exact name. So there was, for me, That was it. And actually, she said Don Juan DeMarco. That was the name, Don Juan DeMarco. But my dad just said DeMarco. So I said, okay, DeMarco it is.
I love how you started it off by saying that it didn't choose you, but then you went to talk about it, and to me, I feel like that's a choosing, right? It's almost like the universe gave your dad this thought of like, I want my child to have this name and this legacy of a name when I'm no longer here. Is your father still with us?
He is not.
Sorry, but to know that I'm leaving this mark. I named you. I feel like it's like I named you once. I'm naming you again, right? In birth
Correct.
and in death. And so I feel like
Correct.
that did choose you in a way, right? It was for you, and for it to be still floating around to where your best friend could say, well, nah, I'm choosing the same name too, right? I feel like that's choosing you, right? It's like it came to meet you in two places at two different
Oh
times.
yeah.
And so
That's most definitely.
yeah, I love that. So how, knowing that your dad threw this name out for you to hold on to, how do you feel about that, and how do you feel he would feel in this moment knowing that you heard what he said and you did that?
I think that I always know. One thing, I don't want to speak religiously or any of that. But I want to say that one thing I know for sure is that when it comes to ancestors and people in my life, they continue to show up in their own way in my life. And my father, he's continued to be like that great asset in my life. So the one thing about it is before he passed, he always told me like, I'll always be proud of you. He gave me a hard time growing up. Had to mow the lawn. I kind of had, like attention deficit back in the day. I was paying attention to Miss Johnson across the street. So I was in a lot of trouble even back then. So, my dad, he was like, yo, why you ain't finished mowing this lawn? What's wrong with you? And you owe money on this lawnmower, brother. I didn't buy this lawnmower for you to be out here playing around. I bought this lawnmower so you can do a job. And I still look at life as that today, even with the org. It's something was implanted, a seed was implanted so that I can do a job, and you don't play with that job. That's like when a rose is growing, it's fed, you gotta nourish it, and then it grows. And I feel the same way about a orb and community. So when that seed is planted, you water and you love on your community, and you continue to water your community. You continue to love on your community, and without that, we falling by the wayside. You know what I mean?
That's
So
such a
that's a continued legacy with me. That doesn't go away.
what a beautiful lesson to learn as a child, and us not knowing these lessons that we're learning, and somebody shaping us to be who we are as adults and to lead by that. It's funny you say that, because I was just telling somebody the other day about something that my grandmother told me when I was younger, and that would leads me and leading this organization and
All
leading
right.
me in philanthropy, right? And so it's like those little things that parents give us that they have no idea that they're just dropping it out there, but not knowing that they
Yes.
planting a seed in us to water, and that we manifest that later on in our life. So that's beautiful, actually, to know that he wasn't planning about his lawnmower, but but him saying that
Oh yeah.
led you down the path that you on right now. It just speaks volumes of who you are as a person. That even with attention deficit, you was able to pick up that little nugget and lead your life with that, and that's beautiful. And so as growing up then, so you want to share with us your trans experience of like who you were as a child growing up and up until now, your transition journey.
Well, I can be, quite transparent. That, so number one, I'm not trans. I'm an intersex male, of trans experience. So I'm gonna break that down too, so that people can understand it. So
Yes,
I
please
was
do.
not quite born with the organs, of female. So therefore, at birth, I was already considered intersex. They had already told me early on I could not have kids, I could not do any of that, which I was very sad about. Um, you know, we'll share another story on that later on. Um, but being black and being who I was, and growing up the way that I did, I tried to take everything as a solace in my life. I went to therapy from the age of 7 years old. I was also on estradiol since the age of 7 years old. I stopped taking estradiol at the age of 16. I felt like this is not who I am. I don't know if this is truly who I want to be. I also felt like it took away a piece of my voice. It almost like it silenced a part of who I was. And so I decided that, hey, so I'm not going to be on any medication. And I'm going to do that for a while until I figure it out for me. Years later down the line, I was here back and forth in Atlanta. Um, and I decided, I said, hey, so, my voice has been deeper than this, my whole life. Um, and I'm gonna be honest with you. So here in Atlanta, when women see me, they say, you have a beautiful face. I cannot stand that. But I think that, I've learned to carry it well, as a brother. I've learned how to accept it as being who I am. I don't know that, intersex and community is truly transparent and accepted. I noticed that in a lot of spaces that, even when I fill out applications, intersex is not there. So all I know how to do is love on the folks who love on me. When I built Advocates of the South Incorporated, and I really don't want to talk about him, but I will. So BT, the longest lived legend of the South, transforming organization. I don't care who says what, he's the true father of the South. If you truly came up here in Atlanta, then you know about BT and you know about transforming. One thing about BT is, I'ma love you for who you are. And regardless to who you are, I'm gonna provide resources for who you are. I never felt that father figure. And I had my father growing up, you know, but I never felt that true father figure until I ran into BT. Um, and when I tell you that, um, if you look on the website, I always say I'm paying homage. Because the season, we got to learn how to love those seasonal people. Those people opened up doors, those doors, especially in brotherhood, out here in the South. See, brothers out here was not willing to be open and visible. Even on today, you have more brothers who are not willing to be open and visible in the South. that want to stay stealth versus who actually willing to be open and visible and stand on this front line today. That takes a wind. And so I think that at the beginning of the day, the South has struggled with so many things. So when we run into these separate eras for brothers right now, I hope that we running it together. I hope that we leaning on that hopefulness and that love that lead the way, guide the way. You know what I mean? I'm a little bit older. So even when I'm talking to the younger brothers, I see that there's like this separation line. And I hope that we're able to stand on that same page. Because I hope that genuine love with brotherhood, it resonates. See, the women, I do feel like they've already been where we're standing. And I feel like we've not been there yet. And I hear all the brothers on every standpoint, where we're going, where we've been. I hear the loud shouts of, we don't want the women to lead it. And I'm not gonna make a comment to that. I'll be in a lot of trouble. So I'm not even gonna lead into that comment. But I will say this. I will say history could be a repeat of itself. If anything that I want in this interview to say is the biggest thing that I want to say is that, and I don't want to get your show in trouble. So I want to say that with President Trump, we talk about democracy, right? But so do we not only address President Trump, or are we not addressing that in our own community? Because the one thing about it is gatekeeping in community is democracy. I've decided that I'm the head honcho, and I've decided you're not going to get funding. So, and I'm gonna try to keep this. I'm gonna try to keep away from the religious aspect of it. But I'm gonna be real honest with you. All these titles that folks are carrying, it leads away from the true, victorious, resilience community that I know.
Hey, this is Joel Simu, production assistant for Dem Bois Podcast. Love visual storytelling? Then you'll want to check out our YouTube channel. We're bringing you exclusive interview shorts and taking you behind the scenes with content you won't find anywhere else. Find us on YouTube at Dem Bois Inc. or click the link in our show notes.
First, I want to say thank you for being vulnerable and sharing about yourself and just about your intersex experience. And I knew that, and the way that you explained it to folks, I hope that folks get a bit of an understanding. So first I want to say thank you for that. And also want to ask you, and you say from a trans experience. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit more about how the identities are intersecting into a trans experience. That's the first thing. But I also want to ask you, growing up in the Black community, how was your experience as far as like your family in helping you navigate that?
So I'm gonna be real honest about it. I don't want to talk about how my family helped me navigate it. I didn't have that quite support that was needed. I think if people follow me on Facebook today, then my whole family is on my Facebook. And they watch my life today. So I'm gonna leave that at that. But I am gonna say when it comes to trans experience, and so I hope that this, maybe you want to put a trigger warning up there. I don't know what it is. Um, but I'm gonna say when it comes to trans experience, and so I'm not sure what language I should use, but I wasn't born with like this courageous bottom half. So years down the line, I decided that, you know what, that isn't workable for me. So I went to a surgeon and he said, well, I've done this surgery on trans guys. So he did explain to me that your original anatomy, which my original anatomy already worked. So if I got this bigger anatomy, then I was gonna have to get the same thing that was carried with cis males that did sex work. And then I was gonna have to get the same thing that transgender males got. Either I was gonna have to get a pump or a ride because I will be not able to lift it on my own. So that is where trans experience came in. Is that, I've been through that same thing. Instead of taking that funding those years and being able to live a sex, that life that I looked forward to, I had to take those years, those finances, and actually finance what was going on with me. I did deal with a major dysphoria for many, many years. Today I've created a sleeve that will go out at the end of this year for guys who don't have a pump or don't have a rod. Because I wanted to build something that that I've been through personally. So, one thing about it is I definitely don't separate myself from the trans community. That's the closest love that I know, but I do know that I have to stand for and who I truly am, because intersex folks, we are missing on that table. I remember when I got locked up, and I remember I am the first intersex male to be locked up here in Fulton County. And it just came out last year, publication wise. And so, when looking at it, I remember like when I was separated from, a trans guy, and they told me like, hey, so you can't talk to that side over there because you're over here. But I remember being able to relate, and I remember, the tearing apart of it. And so, I'm always in that introvert, I feel like. And I want to protect just as much because I do feel like I'm just as much a part.
Here on Dem Bois Podcast, we always say visibility equals possibility. And what I want to ask you is, and so we were talking about, you were talking about Donald Trump earlier. So I want to mention this because I feel like it should be mentioned. But this idea of when he first came in office, and Lord help us, because it's only been a couple of weeks, a month actually. But one of his first executive orders was to on a federal level make it only two sexes that's possible, male, female, whatever. And
I feel like, and I definitely feel like that's not possible. I will be real honest with you. I remember when I heard that comment, and I remember feeling like, you just threw a brick at me. Because there is no day of my life. I even remember when I changed my ID from, and I'm gonna be honest with you, my not my ID, but my birth certificate. So my birth certificate has always said hermaphrodite. So when that was changed, I even felt hit. I felt like, should I really do this? Because that's probably always who I'm really gonna be. And so, to be honest with you, when he made that comment, I felt like, who are you to decide who we are? See, what folks don't understand is hermaphrodites have been here since the age of the legends. You can go back and we've been here. We were born the way we were. So if you take that away from us, you're also challenging us with those same big types that we know as injustices. We look towards those same liberations. I don't know that government today and the climate that we stand in, I worry about that. And I definitely worry about that for the youth, and where we're going, you know. Um, and, for other folks who are intersex. I'm not the only intersex brother. I'm not the only intersex brother that describes myself the way that I do. Even some people, if they call me, oh, he's trans. I've had a lot of sisters that don't understand what intersex is. So they'll be like, oh, he's trans. And I'm not bothered by that either. I definitely can speak for it. I've lived a little bit differently. There are no folks here that have been locked up, according to Fulton County, that are trans. So, I'm the first intersex male here that has been locked up in Fulton County to be held in regular full-side male society. And I actually have an interview in 2 more months with the press here in Atlanta on it. And so, it's a different experience. It's a different feeling. I even want to, I think open the doors to say that, I felt like, if I could have been locked on the other side too, I definitely would have fought for it. Because I think I would have felt more comforted with people that I felt like related to me. I did not feel that way on the other side. And I don't want to harm anybody from the alternative dorm, either from Atlanta who was locked up with me. So I do want to say that I don't mean any harm by what I am saying. But my relations is, a whole lot deeper than that. And I feel like, community, when we say we stand together, I think that we all have relations of what we're closer to. And I think we got to learn to respect that. We got to learn to love on that. Not to create division, but to create that real just what we call brave spaces, what we call safe spaces. And for it to be okay for me to relate to what I relate to and that to be okay. I thought that was the true liberation inside a community. So I hope that it is okay that I say that.
And so with that though, you are the founder and executive director of Advocates of the South. You want to tell us a little bit more about what brought you to this moment in leadership?
Oh my gosh. I think that's a whole lot of questions in one that you asked me. But I can say that one, I've always been a leader in the South. I've still with Solutions, Not Punishment. A founding member of SNAPCO. Like I told you, I'm one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter. And so the one thing about it is I've always been a leader. I just chose to choose, I made that choice in where I stood. I didn't choose to, I chose later on to come out and be okay with that. Even today, it's really funny that you can look at my past on Facebook, social media here in Atlanta. And I remember when the girls used to call me Trade. And I didn't even know what that was. So I was very offended at that time. I'm not offended today. Uh, but I was very offended back then because I had no idea, no clue. But as where I stand today and with Advocates of the South is creating a wave. The one thing about it is I look at my guys every day, and and regardless to what people think, I'm a very hard founder and executive director, because I want my guys, guess what, to have those skills. If somebody else contact them, guess what? You won't see my guys as those guys that, it is at that conference and they don't know how to be leaders. All of my guys are leaders, and I promise you, if you called any one of my guys any day of the week, I promise you they are leaders. So one thing about Advocates of the South, like I told you, we have 3 branches. So one is trans, one is intersex, and one is gender nonconforming. Nobody under that umbrella is treated differently. You are all loved and appreciated the same. See, what some people didn't realize that in the South, some guys wanted here now, wanted to be considered gender nonconforming, and it's because they didn't want to transition. It doesn't mean that they are not that guy. So we're not taking away any experience from any guy. Be who you are, because that's what community is always preaching. You don't have to be trans masculine. You don't have to be any of that to be the guy that you are. So the difference is when you come to Advocates of the South, you're going to know the difference. And we want that on platform. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell folks who don't exactly know and haven't really looked it up yet, or this is their first time hearing about Advocates of the South. What is it that the organization does? What is the work that you all do?
So I'm going to be real honest. We do a lot of things under platform. So recently we started DDWC. DDWC stands for Daranisha Duncan We Care. Daranisha Duncan is the founder of Take Resource Center out in Alabama. So, we had been out to so many things in Alabama with Daranisha, and Daranisha used to be our physical sponsor in 2024. But we took so much from them that, one thing about it is I don't care what event you went to, you was fed well. Like we left there, brother, and I was on the road. I was about to go to sleep. Like for real, my brothers was fed well. So we started to we started to follow that and example that and honor her and provisions. Cause one thing about it is in community, sometimes you get through you know how people throw us the scraps, the leftovers. You know what I mean? But she taught us that When you eating, everybody deserve to eat well. Everybody deserve to eat good. We talk about community love. You got to put that love back into it. So that's one program that we initially, we've been running it for almost 2 months now, and we've had a lot of success turnouts over that. So I'm loving that program. We have a housing program, and it's actually a partnership with Amethyst here in Atlanta. So, we don't just provide regular transitional housing living. Our program does something totally different than what they're doing here in Atlanta. So we actually provide mental health services. So and I think we should do that interview way later on about how all of this started. Because me and the founder of Amethyst, we worked for a place called Dunwoody Behavioral Health Services. So we all carry like license for what we do. And we've all worked in mental health. So it's a long story about how that program was created and the reason why it stands today. But one thing I can say about that program is that we learned from where we were. So we seen people come into an institution and not be treated fairly. And so folks decided that, guess what, we're going to do something different where trans folks can come in and be treated the way that they should and be loved on, and it be okay. So I'm gonna leave that at that. And then we also have SSTJ. So SSTJ stands for support stop the gelling. And so originally, like, we ran SSTJ as a campaign here in Atlanta, and it was all around Atlanta, about stopping gelling with trans individuals, with gender nonconforming, because here in Atlanta, these folks didn't know how to treat folks. Like, they locked you up and just threw you in this cell. And if you needed therapy, we don't care. If you needed mental or emotional support, we don't care. If you was on any type of hormone, we don't care. And we gotta kick that out. You know what I mean? And we here to protect our folks. So SSTJ was brought to the ground for that matter. A little later on, we decided to bring in putting money on people's books and paying for their tablets. I remember one thing when I was locked up, and I can only speak from experience, is that when I was locked up, I had somebody advocate for me and be there for me. And so I looked at it the rest of the route. Like, so the program that I was looked out under only represented for trans masculine. But how about the folks who they don't represent as masculine? So then they're just not guys, or they're not respected. I'm not really sure. So, we don't want to forget about our own. We want to love on everybody. And so, that's where SSTJ came in. We're still pushing that work. We're still pushing that campaign. We were recognized in 2003 by Mayor Khalid of South Fulton. We did win an award for South Fulton for SSTJ. We were one of the only groups that stood on the ground that not only represented masculine Black brothers, but we represented all brothers united. So, I'm grateful for that as well. Advocates of the South, I don't want advocates of the South to be like everybody else. I wanted to make a wave that says, this is a love that we represent. For many, many years, I've already been through mistreatment. And I hire guys in who feel the same. So only thing I want people to bring to this program is that mistreatment that you went through. Show me how you would do it differently.
I love that. I love that.
Hey, this is Jackal from Stealth, a Transmasculine podcast. Join me and my co-host Kai as we interviewed transmasculine elders about their experience growing into their authentic selves. The term stealth highlights two important facts. That one, for our generation, we were often told to hide our past and live an underground existence. And that due to that, our stories are very often overlooked. Throughout our lives, each of us has had to navigate issues of disclosure, which have impacted us in many ways. We also have a member section where you'll get to hear some amazing transmasculine history from Black jazz musicians to Mexican revolutionaries. We hope you join us for season 5 as we continue to emphasize that transmasculine folk have always been here and that we will continue to be here. Be sure to check out our website, transmasculinepodcast.com.
I know before we started, we were talking about death in our communities and how so many of our brothers are dying. Do you want to speak more on that and more of the work around that you are doing?
So I don't want to go too in detail with the work that we have going on right now, because it's actually a major project that we have on the ground. So I don't want to go into too much detail with that, but I want to say that one thing about it is that as brothers, we're not forgetting where we came from. So one thing about it is if one brother goes, all our spirits is down, not just one. You know, I think that we all look at it our own way, and that's no problem. You know, but the one thing about it as we build the brotherhood community and brothers are passing away, the only thing I can ask brothers is, how do you feel? How are you addressing it? How are you dealing with it? You know, and I deal with it on a daily. You know, coming into my team, I can look at my team and I'll be real honest with you. Like I'm a real I'm a really masculine dude. So, I'm always asked, like, bring it down a notch. But I'm that dude. Like I'm not gonna let nobody be harmed. I'm about all of that. I didn't start as an advocate. I started as an activist. So I'm that one who gonna stand on the front line. I got beat down. Maybe what year was that? 2010 by Atlanta PD and left on the side of the road. So for me, guess what? You know, I don't care nothing about that. People, this thing about the South and oppression and threats and this, that, and the third. I care about being there for my brothers. It's brothers that they're not the same. You know what I mean? They're brothers, yes. But some brothers, all they learned how to do was go to school and keep quiet. You know what I mean? So it's up for us. Leaders on the front line, y'all want to step up only when it's for y'all. You got to step up. It's brothers out here passing away. You know what I mean? And it's up for us to take that front line. It's up for us to take up for each other. For weeks long, I've been all, and I don't do Facebook. I don't do social media, none of that. I'm so grateful for my team because my team does a lot more than what people know. But I've been on Facebook and I've seen like all these postings and this, that, and the third. But how are we doing these remembrances, brother? How are we showing up for our own? And when we do, I didn't do anything online, and I asked the org not to do anything online, because the reason why I did that is because if I'm gonna bring y'all into remembrance, when am I bringing y'all also to a candlelight? I'm not gonna trigger, I'm not gonna draw triggers and not offer the methods that it is for us to stand as a whole to go through this together.
Hi there, I'm Mike, and I'm the creator of Trans Mass Stories. When I was at the start of my transition, I searched for uplifting stories of people who had questioned their gender identity, gone through their transition, and come out stronger. I needed direction and a light at the end of the tunnel. Trans Mass Stories is my way of paying it forward. It's the resource I wish I'd had, a space full of real, positive, and anonymous transition stories from transmasculine individuals, offering clarity and hope for anyone navigating their journey. If you're on the transmasculine spectrum, I'd love for you to share your story. And if you know someone who could use some direction, send them over to transmaskstories.com to explore dozens of transition stories. All right, that's all. Enjoy the show now. Cheers.
That's a really good point, actually. That people don't realize that once you open that up, you have to be able to close it.
Correct.
You can't. You have to
Correct.
be able to hold people in this work.
And you don't know what somebody's going through once you open that platform. You know, I've had brothers call me immediately after they seen something else on somebody else's page and like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I'm going through this, I'm going through that, I'm breaking down or whatever. And I'm like, I can't fix that. And I also did not post that. But I couldn't think as me. I had to think as a whole. You know what I mean? Now, how do I connect this person to somebody that they can talk to that can run them the rest of the way? Because one thing about it is you don't know who dealing with what already, you know. So we gotta, as brothers, I'm sorry to say it, but we gotta be a little bit more accountable too, and a little bit more thoughtful when we putting stuff out there in community. It's okay to talk about who passing away and how we gonna pull together, but don't just put something out there and not be able to say, okay, tomorrow we lighting candles at 11 o'clock. Cause guys, we gonna raise this up in the air so that we can have that same frequency of love that we had before the day of yesterday. You know what I mean? But as brothers, I feel like certain things are, we just say it and then we say it and we leave it. No, that's a harm to people. And so, even like I said, I even told my team, I don't want any of that posted. And I will be so grand about it. I work in mental health. I'm a behavioral health analyst. So I understand it and I get it. And I even, when it comes down to it, I do my own thing when it comes to, surrounding with that love that, and even with my team, with the folks around me, but I kind of do it in private, where my guys know it's okay to come here. It's okay to come into the building of Advocates of the South. And I need to talk. I need to lay my head down. As they would say back in the day, lay your burdens down. And I'm a little older school, so
I know exactly that reference. I'm a little old too, so that's definitely a church reference.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanna second your point that you made, a very, very good point about being careful with it. Be careful what we post and how often we post it. And one of the reasons why I do not tap into social media, yes, it's okay to know what happened, but I don't want to see it a million times on everybody's page, everybody's feed, and to be aware that some of us not mentally prepared to witness that 10 times over, right?
And that's triggering.
It is very
It's
much
triggering.
so.
See, as brothers, we not able to be honest about that. That's triggering. If you go on every time you turn around, you seeing that I don't want to say any names. So I'm gonna say blank died, and then blank died, and then blank died. And guess what? I already had a bad week. And so now, like that's just 10 times over. You know, one thing for me is, and I because I'm gonna try to push that off. But one thing for me is what I'm gonna say, because I like to use I statements. So one thing for me is that I believe in a celebration. I get the sadness and I get all of that. But I want to bring in that resilience of when we were here. What love grew up out of that seed, because without you, where you were wouldn't have planted the way it did. I think the one thing that trans, intersex, gender non-conforming people do not hear, we've already been down this lane. We've already been through this injustice. Guess what? We gonna stand. I promise you. If don't nobody remember it by my words. We gonna be the next Black Wall Street. I promise you. Because the resilience of community is a resilience that haven't nobody else carried. Let me ask you a question. And I know this your interview.
No, go
But
ahead.
let me ask
You're free
you
to ask me.
ask you a question.
Yes.
Have you ever looked at every protest, every rally on TV or YouTube?
Honestly, I can't. Mentally,
Okay.
I can't.
So I don't want you to watch all of them, but I do want you to go back and watch the Black Lives Matter one, because I promise you, half the folks that you're going to see standing on the front line is trans, intersex, and gender non-conforming. That's why I say what I say. We continue to stand on the lines for everybody else. And I'm preaching this year in 2025. If you my ally, if you ain't getting hit with some of them same rocks that I'm getting hit with, how much are you my ally? Trans guys, intersex guys, gender non-conforming guys, it's time to stand up. Stand up. We're not on the back. Some of them lines folks used to walk on before waiting. You don't need to wait no more. You don't need to wait no more. This is 2025. Visibility is already at our table. They talk about how community is disproportionate, then stand up and make it not disproportionate. I don't want to hear any of that any longer. Stand up and make it undisproportionate. I see the same things that everybody's talking about. I just so happen not to stand in other folks' shoes. But I'm grateful for the shoes that they walk in, because those are not my shoes. But some of the things they go through, you ain't gonna see me go through it. The disproportionate is gonna stay on one side of the fence. And I think, brothers, we've been through so much. We've been on that back line, and we've been kind of silent. And it's okay, because that's a part of, some of where we are. And it ain't that we being silent. And I better not say that on here either. But we just a little classy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
you
we
can
a
say
little
whatever
busy.
you can say whatever you need to say here. This is a free
Yes,
space to say what you need to say. Get it out.
yes, but we just been businessmen. You know what I mean? It's every environment is not the same. So I don't need to go down the street in Publix and be yelling and screaming. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when I go in Publix, I'm gonna go down there and act like I have some sense and some manners for number one. Hey, how you doing today? You know what I mean? That's an everyday thing. And here at Advocates of the South, I don't know, however folks choose to do it, it's on you. But here at Advocates of the South, we definitely we even have a class here where we do that, where we bring that to the table. How do you open that door for your significant other? And I don't care what they are. How do you open that door for them? How do you respect them too? When do you put on your first suit and tie? Even if you don't want to wear a suit and tie, whatever it is you want to wear, your first elegant event. And so we come into all of that. And my guys traditionally, they open that door to those conversations with everybody who comes into the door. But I do want to be very open and transparent that Advocates of the South, with certain programs, we don't only just help guys, we do help women as well.
I love that.
And those are trans women. We do not go out of the umbrella. And I want to be real honest with you. When I first opened up Advocates of the South in 2022, I talked about bridging this gap. Within the last couple years, you haven't heard me talking about bridging the gap. We've got to build the actual infrastructure of the trans, intersex, gender non-conforming community before we begin to bridge gaps. And I do want to bring up a very important issue that I think that a lot that I've been running into. So DEI, while I love everybody who wants to go stand on that front line, I am not one personally that's going to do it. So we continue to, one, put our resources on the line for folks who necessarily don't even care for trans people. I just want to be honest. I'm not going to say no names, but 2 weeks ago, I was just at Atlanta's Hartville airport, and a sister there was detained by a Black officer and was not able. They held her passport and told me I was violating the law by sitting in the airport to wait for her. So when I tell you that DEI is not something right now that Advocates of the South is going to invest any time in, I don't think so. I think that the community needs to think longer and they need to think harder. The infrastructure for trans, intersex, and gender non-conforming structures has to be planted first. You cannot go feed people who outside of the community before you feed your own community.
Thank you for that. That speaks volumes of who you are and what you stand for. And I appreciate your transparency and your honesty in that. And that's like saying, and I say this all the time, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you can't breathe life into somebody else with your last damn breath. You got to, they say it all the time on the airplane, put your mask on first, even before putting a mask on your baby. Put your mask on first, because what good are you if you pass the fuck out? You know, you can't now you can't administer the mask to your child because you know what I mean. You can't be there for your child because you passed out. So you definitely have to,
Mhm.
you can't go out here feeding the community, but you're not in the house cooking for your own children. I mean, it's all the same, right? We
Correct.
can give so many examples of
Yes.
that. Um,
Yes. It's just, metaphorically speaking.
right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's there.
I really appreciate that. And it gives folks something to think about when we're thinking about we are actually stretching ourselves thin when we're going to all
We
the
are.
fighting for all these other issues. And then when it comes down to the folks lining up to fight for trans rights, you don't see nobody.
And
And so, yeah,
correct. And I asked that same thing here in Atlanta. I'm not gonna say who it was, but I've had more than one person that hit me and say, "Oh, we going to go do this DEI thing, and we doing a protest and da 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 da." And I'm like, "Well, where was y'all protesting when such and such was at the airport and they had them detained?" And where was y'all resources then? I just that's just me. Like, you want to talk about the real causes, you want to talk about the real love, you want to talk about, you know, and I'm not about no titles. When you call me, I don't like, all that, oh, you got this title, that title. I don't want to hear that. My name is Demarco. That's it. Because I'm gonna be technical with you, but the one thing about it is God only gave me one duty to do here, and until I do that duty, you can call me national, international, 3,000 other names, but the only name that gave to me and the duty is what God gave me to do.
facts. I love it. I love it. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. And so this is the part of the show where I like to, as we wrap up, I like to ask my guest a random question. And so I have a list of questions that I'm always adding to. And so now I have 69 questions. I'm not going to ask you all of them. But what I am going to
Okay.
do is, yeah, no. What I am going to do is I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 69, and then I'm going to ask you that question. And the caveat to that is I would like for you to take one and leave one. So I want you to answer a question, but then I also want you to leave a question for a future
To
guest
leave
to
one.
answer. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna go with 42.
Number 42. Number 42 says, what would you tell your younger self?
Mm. So I would tell my younger self, take your time. It didn't it it doesn't matter what another person says. What do you believe in heart of all hearts? Don't let society lead your way. Let your intuition and what's in your heart run your race. Your race will not even be done with society, but your race will be done when he says it's over.
I love that, DeMarco. Take your time. Take your time. If I could, I've had a guest before pick that question, and every time I always have something different to tell my younger self. And so as I was listening to you, one thing that I think I would tell my younger self is something that I battled with growing up. And even as an adult, I go to therapy every week and I'm still working on it. But I would
Oh,
tell
me
my
too.
younger self, you are smart.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with verbal abuse in my home, and I grew up thinking that I wasn't smart. I wasn't smart enough. And
Mm-hmm.
anywhere I went, I always just thought I wasn't smart enough. And I battled that. I'm about to be 44. Excuse me. And I still battle that from what I
We
heard when
close
I
to
was
the
a kid.
same age.
Yeah. We old. But we made it though. We here. So
And
many of us that didn't make it.
I graduated when I was 16 years old and was in college when I was 16 years old.
Ooh.
My mother is of a different race. So my father is Black and my mother is Korean. So, growing up, I dealt with like a lot of different, things. When I was younger, I looked a whole different way. When I got older, they said, "Oh, you look like your daddy." You know what I mean? I didn't know what that meant back then. I didn't know what it meant as a kid. I learned that later on, like, oh, I look black. That's what that meant. And for me, I love that. I love that. I love the black about me. Because the one thing is that it didn't matter whether it was my father or my mother. But for me, it's the black that's gonna beat somebody ass if they keep trying it. It's the black in me that if you put your hands on my sister, I'ma handle you. It's the black in me that if it's me and my brother's out and you decide to spit on him, it's gonna be a problem. Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
ain't having none of that. So I love it.
Yeah.
I've grown to love that. And the question that I would like to leave for folks is how are you breaking the difference between society and the reality?
Ooh, that's a good question. Love it. Demarco, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Is there any last words you would like to leave before we get up out of here?
Just like the big sign say back there, justice and liberation, it just doesn't stand for all. For one, I meant to say it stands for all. So the one thing about it is, remember when you walking down that street, know that you deserve just as much. When you go to work every day, if you feel like you gotta have your head down, know in your heart that there's justice, there's liberation for you too. I don't want anybody from this community thinking that their life is not worthy. We worthy. Hold your head up. See, we gonna march this race. We gonna march.
Them boys,